today what transparent banking is and why it is important and how we can achieve that and what is needed to achieve that. So that's how my presentation is going to unfold. I'm going to tell you first why we need transparent banking, how we can get there, and then what we actually need for actually doing transparent banking. And if some of you have read the book of Simon Sinek, I think I try to follow his approach. So why, how, and what. I start with the why, I go to the how, and then I what. So let me just tell you. So just to set the scene, Tesobe is a tech company, consulting company based in Berlin. We offer different services to different target markets. Mainly, we offer API consulting and strategy consulting. We help financial institutions building fintech community, and we have our own technology that we deploy for our clients. And the technology is again is the Open Bank project, which is an open API platform used by banks and other financial institutions to build their ecosystem of third parties. And the core is really openness, so open standards. The platform is open source, rely on open data and so on. Now, let me move to the topic of the day. So let's start from a real assumption, which is democracy, right, is not a given. Cool capitalism needs the right condition to prosper. So I think that's something that we all agree. The neoliberalism philosophy that was mainstream probably till yesterday now is kind of under criticism. So probably we are going to revise some rules that underlie our economy and our society. Specifically, what we have learned is that corruption is really everywhere. And look at this map. Look at Italy. Look at the color. Rather, it is worse for the people. And not only in Italy, obviously, there are many different shades of corruption, also in Georgia, for instance, but not only, obviously, also in Germany. I mean, probably also in Germany, but the perceived corruption is much less. What this corruption brings to people, basically, corruption brings distrust in state. Distrust in state is not only the consequence that corruption brings, but it also leads to a distrust in banks and, of course, instability. What we learned is that banks are really important for the economy. Without banks, many small, medium enterprises get no access to funding, and many people cannot buy their house. So it's important that people trust banks, and banks should try everything they can to stay away from these kind of malpractices. There is this vicious cycle that brings inequality, distrust, apathy, information deficit, all because there is data obfuscation. And this, at the end of the day, means that we are extracting resources, maybe public resources, from the economy for the benefits of only few people and not for most of us, right? So public funds are probably extracted and not used for what they are meant to be used. So what we need transparency. I mean, this is pretty clear. I mean, I'm not the only one advocating for this. And we also can think of transparency as a sliding scale of privacy and disclosure. I want to exemplify this because it's much easier, and also given the time. Say that you are a public person, so you are a politician, and you are living Tbilisi, and you are basically handling public funds. What can you do in order to show the public, to your voters, that you are completely transparent? One thing that you can do is that you can open up your bank account, so you can show to the public where you're spending your money and where your money are coming from. And this doesn't mean that the public is going to see exactly how much you spend every week in, in beers or in chocolate, because you can remove information and add other information to your transactional data in a way that different users, so you are a user, the politician is a user, the accountant of the politician is another user, the public can be another user. So these three different users might have different view rights. And with different view rights, you are entitled to see different information of the same data. So basically, in technical terms, you are entitled to see different metadata of the same data. So you, as the politician, you are the account owner, you see everything. You see the balance. So you see this matrix on the right, the balance, comments, the name of where you spend the money, the merchants where you spend the money, and so on and so forth. The public maybe can be given only the transparency on the name of basically the shop where you spend the money, without showing the balance, without showing the tags, without showing other things. Another type of user instead can see the balance, can see the alliances and can add comments. For instance, if I go to this politician bank account and I see that there is some strange transaction, then I can add a comment and say, hey, look, can you explain this transaction to me because it's not really clear? And then this comment will stay in the transactional history of this bank account. So that's not really the future. That's something that is really can really happen today. I understood that we discussed open banking before my talk. So I guess the public, the audience already is familiar with that. And open banking can really lead to this. So that's the why, right? That's why we need transparent banking. How do we get there? I already said open banking is probably one way, but it's the regulatory way. We can do that also without regulation. And what we have to do is, given that banking right now, at least, is provided by banks, then we have to explain to banks that they have to open up. And obviously, it's not something that is straightforward, right? A bank is, I really like my bank if my bank doesn't mess up my data or my money, right? That's why I trust my bank. So it's really difficult to go to a bank and say, look, you have to open up, because they would say, well, no, really, because my clients rely on me, on their privacy and so on. So we have to explain. So what we do at the Sofit is we explain to banks why opening up the data upon the customer consent is important for them. And obviously banks are not charities, right? They work for profit. So our job at Zob is really go to the bank and say, you have to do that because not only you will increase the transparency of accounts and the customers, but also you will make money out of that because APIs are good for you. Now, this slide is probably 7-year-old, right? But I keep using that because it has this 2020 at the very end of the timeline. Back in 1995, banks were asking themselves, do we need a website? I don't know, blah, for maybe yes. And then in 2000, of course, we need a website. Come on, we cannot work without that. And then in 2010, people working at banks started asking themselves, do we need an API? And today is kind of common knowledge that, you can't do anything without an API probably. And that's something that is becoming really mainstream. This is what is going to happen very soon. You go to, to your search box, you type a search here, give me by my bank account balance, the bank API will connect to your core banking, and then the search will happen within the bank, and the bank will push back a result that will be displayed in any interface, right? Any user interface. More importantly, again, why banks should care about this? Because it brings to them external opportunities, right? It accelerates innovation, identify new business model. In a word, it lets them innovate faster. It brings internal inefficiency down. It helps to build, scale, manage, and retire digital services faster. And it drives down cost. In other words, speed and time to market. And then last but not least, of course, is the regulatory compliance. There are some jurisdictions around the world where the regulator is asking the bank to open up. Only some services, right, is not asking them to open up the way we see. So it's not like the transparent banking, not yet at least, but it's going there. So regulator in the UK, regulator in Europe, but also in Mexico, in North America, in Singapore, pretty much, there are many, many countries that are basically working towards this. This is a research that we have done. This shows basically some jurisdictions, again, as I said, United Kingdom, Australia, Europe, Singapore, Mexico, and not all jurisdictions are taking open banking from the same perspective. There are some that is more market-driven approach, some other more regulatory-driven approach. Some are asking banks to use a specific interface, some other leave some space for interpretation, and some includes payment initiation, some not. Now, without going into the details, I think this is really, something really, really important that is really pushing in that direction. So again, banks have the ability to make transparent banking happen. They are the channel because first, they have to do it if there is a regulation. Nevertheless, there is opportunity to make more money. So that's something that they should really take into consideration. Open APIs, though, are very hard. So even though there are some opportunities, there are also some issues. And we know very well them because we consult them. We consult banks every day. So there are problems with the design of these APIs. There are problems with building those APIs. How do you manage those APIs? And how do you operate, right? So all these problems are really very common across financial organizations. That's why we are here to help, right? So I told you how we are going to get to transparent banking, and the how is by enabling banks. Now I'm going to tell you what we need. So as you already understood, we need APIs, right? So we need APIs, and Open Bank Project is really that piece of software that banks need for doing that. Is the world-leading open banking, open source software for financial institution. What does it mean? It means that it sits on top of the bank legacy IT system, those systems that were not conceived for the API economy. It sits on top and it abstracts away the complexity of the system itself by exposing a standard set of APIs. This standard set of APIs can be the regulatory one and the Open Bank Project native APIs. So those APIs that Simon Redfern in 2010 started to build, and throughout the years, it became a catalog of more than 350 APIs, specifically for banking. What happens on top? On top, third parties come to the Open API portal, they knock the door, literally, they ask for an API key, they register themselves, and they start using those APIs that are available. Some typically are available in sandbox mode for everyone. Some third parties will have the real production data because they will have, basically they have negotiated with the bank some revenue sharing model or some negotiation, or they have to because there is a regulation that allows them to access to it. But anyway, the third parties in this level number 2, they will build added value application on top of that APIs. And then level number 1, there will be the bank's customer using that. So why all this works? Because bank customer will be more than happy to use third-party applications that are really conceived for enhancing user experience in order to get their bank data. Think about that. Not all banks have the best designer, the best UX designer, or the best data scientist in-house. Some banks, specifically the big one, might have a team. Smaller banks might decide, okay, I don't want to spend money on UX. I want to partner with a third party, and I stay behind in some way. I provide the services, but then the user interface, I rely on a third party provider. So that's in few words. Obviously, it's very complex, and it would require probably a couple of hours to explain how platform business model works, but that's in essence, right, in a nutshell. Now, You see all in the level number 2, there is the ERP, which is the enterprise resource planning used by typically a small medium enterprise for managing the cash flow. There is accounting, saving, PFM. PFM stands for personal financial management. KYC stands for know your customer. So all these applications are plugged on top of the OBP middleware. There is one specific application that the Zobe has built, which is called Sofit. And the Sofit it was built exactly for demonstrating what transparent banking is. With Sofit, the politician living in Tbilisi and handling public money can really connect his own bank account and give access to as many users as he wants. And he can also decide what kind of user permission each user has. So this is really a tangible proof of what transparent banking is. And this is something that I wanted to bring to your attention. We are working with many different banks, regulators, and we have always growing developer ecosystem.